welcome back to Breaking the Barrier. I am your host, Cole Coffin, and I got my co-host here, John Carroll. John, how's it going today, man?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Who you got?
I have Bucks going all the way.
Bucks, yeah. I'm rooting for Tommy, too. I'm wearing a Michigan sweater right now, repping Tommy. So
I got a bet on them tonight. So
dude,
nice, let's hope they get it.
I got a couple squares going. I imagine most people have squares going, so hopefully I win some money tonight. Just a reminder for you guys, you can follow us on all of our social medias at Breaks Barrier. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to stay up to date with all of our latest content. You can also donate to us on PayPal. To do that, just click the pinned link at the top of our Facebook and Twitter pages. Donations aren't expected but highly appreciated. With your kind donation, you can help us buy equipment and pay for news subscriptions to better our show and engage with you guys. Donate to us at PayPal by clicking the PayPal link at the top of our Facebook and Twitter pages. If you want to be on our show or have any questions or concerns, please DM us on any of our social medias or reach out to us at coleandjohn@gmail.com. Again, that is coleandjohn@gmail.com. We want to hear all of your feedback so that we can interact with you guys and give you the show that you want to hear. Email us again at coleandjohn@gmail.com or simply shoot us a DM. All questions and concerns are welcome, no matter what viewpoint you have. We love the interaction with you guys and our audience, and we want to stay engaged with you.
So the first thing we want to talk about in today's show is the Michigan February 1st gathering guidelines that just came out not too long ago, February 1st. And what that is Governor Whitmer lifting certain COVID bans that have been in place for over 2 months. To go down the list, just to mention a few things that are open and that were open in the past through January. Some of the items still on that list is 2 household gatherings, and in parentheses under it says high precautions. Like I said, I doubt a cop's going to come knock on your door because there's 3 cars in your driveway. Small outdoor gatherings of only 25 people. And later on in our show, we'll probably talk about Perchville a little bit, and we can kind of get into that and that it was canceled this year. Retail stores are open. Preschool K through 12 are open. Child care, public transit. The list goes on, really. You know, it's most of everything. But what's not open still is workplaces when you can work home, which I don't really think anybody follows that. Maybe certain companies down in Detroit, like my brother's company, they're still following that guideline. You know, insurance companies like out of Grand Rapids that my cousins work for, they're still following that. So I guess if you can work from home, it's good. But, you know, a lot of places around here in Tawas, you can't work from home. So our town is mostly working back in the business space. Nightclubs, aka bars, past 10 o'clock, contact sports. And then it says in parentheses, except professional sports, which is really interesting. That's another thing we want to talk about today is the let them play movement. Long story short, where Governor Whitmer got a lawsuit slapped on her desk. And then that law changed really quick. And then the last thing on the list is water parks. You know, as of February 1st, there are a lot more things open than there were back in December. Like Cole and I have been saying in the last episodes, I think it should have been done sooner. I think if it was still up to Governor Whitmer, if the health department didn't stop with the mandate to shut down bars and restaurants, I personally think she would have shut it down probably till summer, honestly. But her executive order was through the health department. I mean, I'm having a great time going back to restaurants and bars. Me and my fiance took a trip to Alpena and went to a few different restaurants and bars. And, you know, and everybody's just so happy, it seems like. Like last night, you know, we went to Austin Brothers Brewing and a couple other bars. And everybody's following the guidelines, you know, the 25%. And everybody's wearing their masks. And if that stuff is being done, don't you think it's okay where people can go into restaurants and bars and at their own will and eat? I think it's up to the individual to make the decision rather than Governor Whitmer or any other government in that matter telling me what to do.
You know, the impact that this whole second lockdown has had is just it's been quite serious, I think. I mean, just this morning when you and I went to breakfast before the show, when I was paying the bill, you had left, but I was paying the bill and I was talking to the cashier and he was like, "I'm just so happy to be back to work." I just had to be thinking in my head like, man, that kid hasn't worked in probably 2 months.
And that's a young audience wanting to work.
Yeah, and this kid was probably in his very early 20s. I mean, so, you know, and it's like this kid's in his early 20s. He's not in a risk group and he's not allowed to work, you know, and it's like, could you shut down an entire industry? That has serious ramifications. And you had Nancy Pelosi holding up the stimulus money, you know, so it's like he wasn't getting much help at all.
Not to mention the demographic when we were in there this morning.
Yeah, it was mostly old people, which, I mean, we live in an older community, but it's like if older people are really scared about this, then stay home.
They wouldn't be going out.
But that's their choice. You know, that's their choice again. I'm not worried going out. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And why is Governor Whitmer telling me what I can and can't do when ultimately it should be my choice to walk into a restaurant, sit down and eat, or take takeout?
I think her rationale is that, there's externalities involved. So basically what I mean by that is just because you can personally decide for yourself if you can go out, it doesn't mean that you can't potentially infect someone else. And then that has externalities where you get other people sick, and then that clogs up the ICU or the hospital. And, that's probably her rationale. But as we'll see, a lot of those numbers, Iosco County had 35 cases, I think, right? It was
Yeah,
that for the whole...
that's from Michigan.gov. We did some research this morning and just looked up the case rate. I mean, if you go down to Detroit, it's going to obviously be more. But Northern Michigan case rate in the last 2 weeks in Iosco County, only 35 people.
It is, and there should be a distinction made between, Detroit, like major metropolitan areas, and then up north here. And I know she had that plan, which I haven't heard a thing about it, but she had that plan back in the summer where there was areas of the state that she was going to open up in piecemeal, depending on their case rates and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I haven't heard anything on that. I don't know if that's still a thing. It doesn't seem like it. It seems like she's just doing a broad, everything shut down. And really, I don't think that we're at the same risk up here that, you otherwise would be in, like, say, Detroit or Flint or Grand Rapids, a big city in the state. So this also just goes to show that these decisions should try and be made as on a local level as much as possible, because our situation up here isn't like Detroit's. It's not like Grand Rapids. Our situation up here is completely different. We have way less, way less cases. We're not as close together because we're not in a metropolitan area, and there's no reason to shut down the businesses up here.
With many of them actually shutting their doors for good, if not altogether, or till this upcoming summer.
These things have consequences, and which is why, again, this should be made on a local level, because they're in the best position to make those decisions. It should be left to the local health department or your local city council or something like that. But the governor just saying that Detroit has to follow the same rules as the UP and vice versa, it just doesn't make sense, and it's harming small town businesses, which are really important to small towns. And and that could segue us into Perchville, but not having the Perchville festival is going to be really detrimental to a lot of businesses in town. That's a lot of times that's when they make a ton of money, and that helps them get through the winter. Not to mention the local city government, they make a lot of money off of Perchville by selling the beer and stuff and organizing it. So that's going to probably likely have some ramifications as well.
So I do have the law for outdoor events. Why the main reason I assume Perchville was canceled. On Michigan.gov's website, there's a huge list of all the laws and regulations regarding COVID. But it says outdoor gatherings are permitted only as follows. At residential venues, 25 or fewer persons are gathered, comprised of no more than 3 households. This is outside. At non-residential venues, for example, Perchville, 25 or fewer persons are gathered at a venue without fixed seating, and attendance is limited to 20 persons per 1,000 square feet, including with any distinct area within the event space. 25 or fewer persons are gathered at a venue with fixed seating, and attendance is limited to 20%. So long story short, they're saying only 20 people can be standing in one spot within 1,000 square feet. Now, people that are listening that don't know what Perchville is, it's an event here in Tawas, Michigan, where Cole and I are from, where it's kind of like the big winter bash. All the downtown businesses get together. There's a chili cook-off. There's a polar bear swim where people jump into the water. They have like ATV races. I don't think they're on the ice anymore, but they do it at an off-site location. And then the biggest of them all is the big beer tent where they make all their money. And that's kind of what we're talking about here is the beer tent, because it's such a staple for Perchville for the last 71 years.
I think this would have been the 72nd Perchville.
And it's canceled because of these guidelines. I get where the chamber's coming from in canceling the event. I don't personally agree with it, but as a standpoint on COVID and getting in trouble with the state, I just don't know if it's really worth it. As much as I disagree with it, I mean, it's an outdoor event, and there's definitely ways you can prevent large gatherings inside a tent. I think if you roped off a parking lot and just had people have tables set up with the beer being served, it'd be fine. But, trying to get people to wear their mask and I guess not gathering 20 people within 1,000 square feet is nearly impossible. So...
Well, I mean, something you got to consider too is that Perchville is right on the bay. It's usually pretty windy. You don't have to have it in a tent. You could, like you said, rope off a parking lot. There'd be a huge breeze, tons of ventilation. There's things that could be done, and I'm not blaming the council or the commissioners or whoever organizes Perchville. I'm not blaming them. It's really the state government saying this. I'm sure most people on that board would want Perchville to happen, and that's
just like the restaurants. I think everybody in this town wanted the restaurants to stay open, but we couldn't.
Yeah, and it's the ramifications for it are just too great on the state level. So anyway, there's things that could be done to make this happen, and again, that just goes back to my point of decisions like this should be being made on a local level as much as possible, because I think that Perchville absolutely could be done in a safe manner. If you have, a huge parking lot roped off, people who are outside on the bay where it's windy, people would go, and I'm sure it'd be fine. And there's actually studies saying that to catch COVID outside is extremely rare. And that goes back to, the conversations, go back and listen to our other podcasts, but there's risks with everything in life. And so it's like, well, what's a greater risk? Losing all of that business, losing that social fabric,
the community interaction with each other, the businesses and the people that are buying from their stores. It's not only the chamber making the money. Think of stores like the Tea House or Ben Franklin or the Chocolatier. That's people shopping at these stores where it's the slowest time of the entire year. I'm trying to play devil's advocate here, for these people and why they canceled it. And I get it. I get it. But at what point is enough going to be enough? Like we were talking a few hours ago, are you going to have to wear a pin after you get vaccinated to let everybody know you're vaxxed? Or, they're telling people you have to double, triple mask and all this other nonsense. I don't want to deal with this for the next 3 years of my life. And I think a lot of people don't want to deal with it at this extreme. I think it's smart to deal with it in a smart manner. We've seen like Fauci go back and forth on what's wrong and what's right, and Whitmer just telling people what's wrong and what's right. And I just don't think there's any evidence or data to back any of this up. And it's just, to me, it's just nonsense. And it's like the blind leading the blind. Just to bring back up what I was talking about earlier with the Let's Play movement, it was a high school sports movement conducted by players and families pretty much wanting to play basketball again, or just contact sports in general. So I have an article from the Detroit News here just to kind of further explain what I was talking about. What it says is parents, coaches, and players had voiced frustration over the continued closure of high school contact sports in recent weeks, as many high schools resumed in-person learning early January. They argued a pilot testing program used for football tournaments in late 2020 resulted in the low COVID-19 incidents among high school athletes. It said low because that's what Governor Whitmer was basing her data off of to close contact sports in Michigan high schools. During the program, according to the Michigan High School Athletic Association, officials conducted 30,000 rapid COVID-19 tests on student athletes over the last 3 months and found they had a 99.8% negativity rate. So almost every single person that got a COVID-19 test didn't have it. Not to mention they're high school kids, that the transmission rate of high schoolers is very, very, very low in the first place. This past Saturday, supporters of allowing high school sports to resume gathered, that's the Let 'em Play organization, at the Capitol. And when they were gathered at the Capitol, they announced a lawsuit alleging the decision to delay several sports, which were contact sports, that were being violated by the state and federal constitutions. So long story short, like I said earlier, high school sports could not be conducted, but professional sports could be. Now, somebody please tell me the logic behind that. One, high schoolers barely transmit COVID-19 at very, very, very low rates. Yet professional athletes in their 30s, which are at a more risk category, can still play. Not to mention that these people came to Governor Whitmer with a lawsuit, and conveniently, she overturns it when a lawsuit gets slapped on her desk. I mean, if you're talking to me about it, that's like saying she wasn't looking at the right evidence or just didn't care until the evidence showed up on her desk and be like, oh, wow. When these contact sports are playing, only 99.8% of people test negative. This is what I mean by like this fear-mongering, scaring of this COVID stuff. At what point is this going to stop? Because it is just highly, highly ridiculous. And this is just great news that these kids can play high school sports. And later on in the article, it says, it's just good for their mental health in general. I mean, when kids have been learning online and can't even go to school, and now you're saying you can't play sports because you have zero evidence of doing so. You just think it's a good idea, like half the other bullshit you did before too. Thank God this movement did this. And I hope more movements do this because it shows evidence, it shows data. And just going out on a whim and saying, sorry, you can't play because I don't want you to, and I think the COVID numbers are going to go down, sounds good. And guess what? I'm your governor, so you can't do a damn thing. It is just ridiculous to me. And I applaud this organization for letting these kids play high school sports because I am all for it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that kind of speaks to something a little deeper, which is, let me put it this way. So scientists have one job, right? Or at least, virologists or people, like who are in Dr. Fauci's shoes, say. Their one job is to stop the virus from spreading, okay? When you're in a position of power like Governor Whitmer is, you have to consider things beyond that. And yes, like that should be advice from experts, especially like virologists and people with similar backgrounds, that should weigh heavily on your recommendations and your policy that you implement. But at the same time, I feel like she's getting tunnel vision because there's more things to consider than just we need to stop the virus at all costs. I mean, like I said, we know what this virus is. We know that it's not deadly for young people. It's extraordinarily rare for people under the age of 20 to die from this. It's like almost unheard of. And they don't really seem to spread it too much either. Again, I'm happy that, the kids can play contact sports again. But at the same time, I wish Governor Whitmer would consider other things beyond that. I mean, you have to consider, especially when you're in a position of power and you're in a position to make policy, you have to consider how we can best balance things. I feel like there's no balance here in her policy. We have to do all of these things because we must stop the spread of this.
And that's it.
That's like the only thing I'm considering. I feel like anytime she's opened up something, it's like the case we just said, the let them play movement. It feels like we're just prying these privileges I say out of her hands, like she's just begrudgingly giving us an inch, and it really shouldn't be that way. There should be balance here, and there's no balance. She's only considering one factor, which is stopping the spread of this, but she's not deeply considering economics. She's not deeply considering educational issues because a lot of kids are having trouble in school with virtual learning during this. I can tell you firsthand that is occurring. She's not balancing those other issues with this. And so I'm glad that people are pushing back on this because, it is ridiculous. This needs to stop.
And I think you're going to see it just more and more happen with these pushbacks because this movement was, I think, the first of many. And, just for example, like the health department lifting the ban on restaurants. I bet if it was up to her, if she didn't have that executive order through the health department, she would keep restaurants closed to almost summer. But she didn't because the only way she could have pushed that executive order if the health department gave her the okay. So now the restaurants are open again, but limited to 25%. I think personally it should go back to 50. I mean, I think personally it should just open up altogether. But you're going to see a lot of restaurants all over Michigan, especially in northern Michigan, aren't going to abide by that 25%.
No, because I can tell you.
You shut them down for 3 months. They were struggling through the hardest months of the entire year, especially these little, small northern Michigans. You think they're going to abide by your 25%? No, they're not. Trust me, they're not.
I think most people would be okay with some precautions. I don't think that anyone is really saying that things should, we should completely forget that this is a thing. I think that reasonable precautions should be put in place, and I think most people would agree with that. I guess I'm not sure what those look like. I mean, I think providing hand sanitizers, I think maybe limiting or trying to, at restaurants, instead of cramming people together, maybe try and space the tables out a little more. I think all those things are reasonable to do. But to just shut down restaurants or to keep them at 25% capacity, I just don't see the justification for that. At some point, like we've been talking about, it's about balance, and there's no balance here. There's only one data point she's concerned with. And, when she does open things back up, would you be surprised if she did it again? I wouldn't be.
If she could, she would.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
If she had that executive order underneath the health department, she would.
And again, it's there's no balance here. And that's, I think, the issue. And I think that's an issue a lot of people have. I think if she were to sit down with people and say, what can we do to stay open, but also manage this? I think a lot of people on both sides of that would be open to that suggestion. Like, okay, I'm willing to work with you. That's what That's what government is for. That's what we're supposed to do. Is we're supposed to sit down, we're supposed to talk to each other and come to decisions together. And not everyone may agree with it, but I feel like it's more of a, no, we're shutting things down and that's how it's going to be, without considering other things.
Well, I also think just the state of Michigan in general is a highly politicized state, especially with Governor Whitmer.
Well, and lately it's been it's kind of been a swing state.
Yeah, just a perfect example. Me and my fiance are getting married in August, and we're doing an outside wedding. And there's a lot of venues even this year that are canceling on these people. And it's unbelievable the amount of comments on some of these wedding pages and like these tent pages and everything else that says, screw Michigan, just go to Ohio because you can do whatever you want. I'm being serious. Like it's just funny because you could be in Detroit and have a wedding and they limit it, but you can go down to Ohio and do whatever you want. It makes no sense.
I'm looking at an article right now on 538.com. It's by Maggie Korth. It's called "What a Summer of COVID-19 Taught Scientists About Indoor versus Outdoor Transmission." Basically, she's discussing in the article, she quotes a lot of different experts, and I'll kind of quote from a little bit of the article. But basically in the article, she's talking about there's a study from China. Out of a case study of 7,324 case reports in China, only 2 part of the same transmission event could be linked to an outdoor setting. So basically, only 2 cases out of 7,324 were linked to being outdoors. Okay. Then a database of more than 20,000 cases, which included the 7,324 cases, Chinese cases that I just mentioned, found that 461 cases were associated with transmission in completely outdoor environments, predominantly crowded events like markets and rallies. Overall, only 6% of all the cases in the database were linked to events that were either totally or partially outdoors. So I don't really like how they're lumping that in, because if it's totally an outdoor event, which presumably like say Perchville would be, you would have to go off and say, that it's probably much lower than 6% is what I would think. Earlier in the article, she's quoting Dr. Daniel Bosch, a virologist and the director of the UK's Public Health Rapid Support Team. And basically, he's saying that weather itself really isn't a determining factor in how well this thing spreads. So in the article, he's quoted as saying, "We don't need cold weather for significant transmission. It seems to be propagating quite nicely in hot, humid, and close to the equator places." And then she says in the article, "And studies have found that the weather's impact on the virus probably plays a relatively small part in controlling the transmission of the virus. In one study, exposure to UV radiation, sunlight, only decreased transmission by about 1%. Summer didn't make the virus disappear, and the chilly weather isn't, by itself, likely to drastically increase the severity of the pandemic either." And some experts, what she's saying in the article, think that the reason that the cases are going up in the wintertime is because people are forced indoors more. And in the summer, the reason the cases were so low is because more people are outside naturally. Remember this summer how low the COVID numbers were? I mean, they all flatlined in basically the entire country. And then they went up in the wintertime because, of course, you're going to be indoors more. And, that also may be why in some warm places, even when it's warm, year round, like some parts of Texas or maybe even parts of Florida or, in the southern states, in the hot summer, it could possibly be that way because the reverse, you have to be inside because it's so hot out and you have that air conditioned circulating. So anyway, when you look at these numbers, basically what this doctor is saying and what the article is alleging is that cases spread really well indoors, which makes total sense. And it's really rare to get it outside. They're including that 6% number in partially outdoor activities too. But really, when you take that 461 out of 20,000 cases that I mentioned earlier, you're only looking at 2.3% of cases being linked to completely outdoor exposure. When they try and lump in that with the 6%, I just feel like that's pretty dishonest. Perchville could be a completely outdoor event. There's things we could do. You could have street vendors or the businesses, have a little sidewalk sale or something. Like there's things you could do to make this work. And if we're talking about this article, we're talking about 2.3% risk if it's a completely outdoor event. Cold does not significantly spread this more than warmth. At least that's what this article is saying, and that's what the expert was discussing. I feel like Perchville should go forward. At what point can we say that, that's such a low risk that, is it really worth shutting down festivals like Perchville and stuff? And, I don't think anyone's saying that we shouldn't take some precautions or that we should do things differently, but just to cancel these events altogether. And, I think we should at least make an attempt at trying to work with the state to work out something. I mean, why can't they close off downtown and have it, where people walk around and stuff instead of being crammed in a tent. I think a lot of people would go for that. There's just there's no middle ground here. It's like we just don't do anything. It's frustrating because no one tries to come to a solution or a moderate, they don't try and come to the middle at all. It's extreme or it's nothing. We have to stop the virus spread completely. And it's like, that's an unrealistic goal.
For example, the case study we showed back like 3 episodes of the New York case study that the actual state released, it stated that like 74.5% of COVID spread rate is from indoor household party gatherings. And 10% more of that, which would bring it up to 85.5%, was nursing homes and medical care facilities. And really on that entire case study, they didn't say anything about outdoor gatherings. And that was in the fall.
Yeah. And they're just talking about indoor parties. Like, they're not talking about when you go to a restaurant or when you go grocery shopping.
No, restaurants were on there, and the case spread rates at restaurant was 1.4%.
But they're not including that in the 75% that you were talking about earlier. That's a separate percent. So
yes.
they're adding, you have to add that on. So that 75%
and that's on our Twitter page.
That is just from indoor parties at like households. That's not including going grocery shopping. That's not including the nursing homes. Mm-hmm. And then when you add those other things on it, when you add like grocery shopping, going to a store for something, stuff like that, they didn't even, like you said, they didn't even mention outdoor activity.
Because it's so low, it's minimal.
Instead of saying that we shouldn't do anything, shouldn't we encourage people to try and do outdoor activities, in a safe way? Instead of just saying, no, you can't do anything, shouldn't we be promoting outdoor festivals at least? I mean, people are social animals. These things need to happen. I don't see why there couldn't be a reasonable solution to this. But again, it's just the governor top down, not knowing how our local community works, saying you can't do this, you can't do that. And I don't think Governor Whitmer had a Perchville proposal on her desk and she vetoed it. And that's kind of the problem, is that, she's just saying festivals like that are just completely out of the question. It's like, well, why can't we figure out something here?
And that does lead us into summer. Here at the radio station and at the newspaper, we put on a summer event called Tawas Bay Summerfest. And we obviously had to cancel last year because of COVID being so new and these case studies not being out yet. But now we know all the data. And I look forward to see if, the wine festival happens. We personally, you're hearing it here first, we canceled Summerfest this year. That was a decision that our committee made last week, because not that we don't want to do it, because we've already had several meetings where we were planning, but our biggest point of this entire situation is there's a lot of hours put into planning an event like this. And if we make it all the way to 2 weeks before the event and Whitmer just says, sorry, you can't do it, that's all our time wasted. And I personally think, if you had a big tent up right in Harbor Park there, tons of people would come, especially right now with how everything is in Tawas. They canceled Perchville. They canceled all the events last year. People, like you said, they're social animals. They want to get out and do stuff. Like we just saw this past week with the restaurants reopening. Every restaurant I've been in has been slammed every single day.
So we were discussing earlier about how the transmission of coronavirus outdoors is really, really low. So this article is in sciencemediacenter.org. It's on their website. It's titled Expert Comments About Outdoor Transmission of SARS-CoV-2 and Use of Face Masks Outdoors. So basically in the article, it quotes a bunch of different professors and experts in epidemiology saying that masks are generally effective outdoors. In particular, they're saying that they can be helpful if you're outdoors, but if your mask is wet and you walk indoors, it's really bad, so you shouldn't do that. But then, some experts are saying on here, I'll quote Dr. Sean Fitzgerald, Royal Academy of Engineering, visiting professor at the University of Cambridge, said, the risk outdoors is much lower than indoors. However, if you're outdoors and there are other people around, then if the air is relatively stagnant, which it wouldn't be at Perchville, it's outside, we're next to the lake, the risk will be higher, especially if you are stationary. If you are queuing at a market stall, which is only really open to one side, then it is very different from passing someone on a walk by the sea. I absolutely agree with the suggestion of wearing face coverings outdoors in environments where the air is relatively stagnant and where cues form. So again, this expert is saying basically that, if you are to have a festival outdoors, he would probably agree that if you had to have a festival outdoors, then you should probably stay moving or try to stay moving, still social distance when you can, and also make sure that the air isn't stagnant, which again, if it was downtown, it's going to be windy most likely, and it's right off the lake. So
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. Don't just cancel the event, and we're not blaming it on the chamber or the city. We're blaming it on Michigan's government, really, because it's how they're handling the COVID event and what their rules are. The chamber and the city are only going off of what the Michigan rules are. But like you said earlier, don't just cancel the event in its entirety. There's so many ways around this where even if we pushed it back to the beginning of April, we can still do this event and you're still going to make money, just in a different manner. Let's adopt the COVID rules. And I know they're very, very, very strict in Michigan. It's probably one of the most strict states, which is another reason why they probably couldn't do it or didn't want to do it, because they didn't want to have that headache of abiding by these rules. But there are ways that you can still do this annual Perchville event and be safe about it, and still have people shopping, and still have people engaging with the chili cook-off, and still engaging in drinking in a safe manner. Move them. Don't let everybody just congregate in one spot, but there are ways around this.
Well, consider everything that we've been saying too, and all of the the articles that we've been citing. Consider the low transmission rate. Experts are saying, we have these experts saying that, yes, you can get it outdoors, but then we saw the article saying that, you have a 2.3% chance.
If not lower.
And if not lower, so you have a 2.3% chance of getting it. It's still possible to get it outside, which I don't think anyone is going to argue, but it's just really low. And then you have to weigh that with, well, what is the cost of canceling a festival that's been going on in our community since 1950, I think it started.
Yeah.
So, and then on top of that, we've been in this lockdown basically for a year now. So the risks are so low and the benefits are so high because that spurs the local economy. It builds social fabric, which is something that's definitely been taking a hit over the last year, especially having to be through a screen and not being able to see people face to face like you normally would. So when we have the opportunity to have a community building event that is low risk, and that is a huge boon for the economy, especially considering that we just got out of a ill-advised lockdown, or at least for the restaurants and stuff. It seems to me like the risks outweigh, or the rewards outweigh the risks. And again, as we always say, life is about risk management. There's always costs and benefits to everything you do. And in this circumstance, and decide for yourself, but in this circumstance, what do you think? What do you think is a bigger risk? Is it a bigger risk to still cripple the economy, our local economy, by not having this huge festival that brings in a lot of money, and also damaging the social fabric of canceling an event that's been going on in our community for 70 years, or canceling the event because 2.3% of people that would attend the event would get COVID, presumably? At some point, you have to weigh those risks.
And just like the evidence we brought up earlier with the high school kids wanting to play basketball movement, it's the same thing. They did the case studies. They showed it was only 1% It's viable evidence that is there. But on a governmental level, until a lawsuit gets slapped in your face, you're not going to do anything about it.
Right. Well, and also consider a lot of people are getting the vaccine already. I know people personally. I was supposed to get the vaccine last week, but I had a flu shot recently, so I had to reschedule. But I'm going to be vaccinated soon. And so, obviously, what does that say? We're in a completely different place than we were a year ago, or even 3 months ago. We're in a much different place with this virus. And even these studies that we're citing, I think you can make the argument that this data is probably a little outdated too, because it's only going to get better. We have vaccines going out. We're vaccinating 1 million people a day. Good Lord, we're not at the same risk level we were even 3 months ago. So to pretend that we are, and to, have very similar restrictions in place. And I don't think anyone's saying that we can't have certain protocols and procedures and things in place to, limit that. Like if you're not drinking or something, wear a mask, sure, fine. Even if you're out, fine. Should restaurants, maybe just do street food instead of having people in their restaurants? Sure, that could be an argument, or something that we could compromise on. But again, just canceling this altogether based on the evidence that we just have given you guys and the fact that we're vaccinating 1 million people a day, I think it's probably doing more harm than good.
And then it raises the question as, with 1 million people getting vaccinated every single day, when's going to be the point where people aren't yelling at you if you go into a convenience store without a mask on? Do I need to make you a little pin that says I was vaccinated? I mean, at what point? I don't know the stopping point of this vaccine and mass and let's just say herd immunity in general of so many more people getting COVID, but so many people more are getting vaccinated. So is this going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 years? Is it going to be 3 years?
I guess I don't know what the answer would be to that.
But I don't think anybody does.
But I think we should move forward. I don't think we are, or at least I don't think that, people a lot like our governor would probably want to, I don't think anyone is looking forward to when can we end these things. I think that they want to keep these things perpetually and they don't have an eye towards when can we lift these things, when can we lift these restrictions? When can we lift the mask mandates? When can we, go back to living a relatively normal life?
I don't think there's any timeline.
There is. I don't think you can have an exact timeline, but I think that we should be looking to the future with an eye towards trying to end these things. And I don't feel like we are. I don't feel like our government officials are in general. And going back to our other episodes, it's like, if everyone's vaccinated, why on earth are we wearing masks? Why? Why are we doing that? And they're talking about double masking now. I don't care what anyone says. I am not going to ever double mask. I will never double mask. That's stupid. Why don't I just wrap a plastic bag around my head and suffocate myself to death? At least I won't die of COVID. That's true. I mean, I'll protect myself from COVID because I won't have to die from it. I'll die from suffocation instead, Yeah, I'm being a little facetious, but at the same time, double or triple masking, no, that's never going to happen. At some point, we got to, use your head. This is getting ridiculous. It's ridiculous anymore. I think people want to take reasonable measures, but the things that are being put forward are just getting more and more ridiculous. And did you see that China's coming out with this butt swab where they stick a swab in your butt? It's the new COVID test. Nope, not happening. I'm not going to do that.
So our final question of the day would just be, do you guys see a light at the end of the tunnel for when things may get better? I'm personally just curious with people that do listen to our show, and I know you guys are listening because I hear it. What do the people that don't agree with us think? And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I'm actually very curious what somebody that's not like-minded as Cole and myself would think about some of these COVID restrictions being lifted and just Perchville in general, because I know a lot of people do agree with Perchville not going on. It's not that we don't agree with everything, but we just think you can do it in a different way that would still work for people to get together with their family, friends, the people that come all around everywhere just to go to this Perchville event. So we really want to hear from you guys. Just tell us what you think. Just send us an email at coleandjohn@gmail.com or simply shoot us a text message. I know a lot of our regular listeners have our phone numbers, or DM us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And we'd love to just chat about it for a couple minutes next episode. And another thing I wanted to just say real quick is if you guys ever have questions or concerns about what we're talking about and you want to ask us, but you don't want your name to be read out or anything like that, please just let us know. And we'll just say one of our viewers had a question about this certain topic. So I don't want to put anybody on spot if they don't want to be put on spot. And trust me, we would never do that. So just as a closing statement, this show is pretty much all about COVID again, but it's kind of in the forefront of what's going on in Michigan in a big topic that people actually care about and want to hear about.
Yeah, COVID, as we've said in past episodes, it just affects our daily lives so much, and it impacts our lives more than probably any other event has in probably our parents' lifetimes. I think it's a really important example of why you should be interested in government and who's running the government, why you should be interested in civics, because this does affect your life. A lot of people have the opinion that civics does not affect my life. It doesn't matter how I vote because it ultimately doesn't matter. It does matter. And you can see that right now. You can see how Whitmer's governing versus like Ron DeSantis in Florida or Governor Newsom in California or Cuomo or DeWine in Ohio. There's so many other places that are running things differently. And it's actually really interesting to see how, things are affected. And again, we know that there's so many data points, and obviously the data that we talk about on the show is always going to be incomplete because again, there's so many data points. There's so many things. Well, does the hot weather affect it? What if you are masked, double masking? But we're just going off the information that we see and that you're likely to find on Twitter or, in general news sources to draw our conclusions. We're not experts. We're just going off what people say. And we're also, using our common sense to kind of compile all that information to say, what does this all mean? What would a reasonable person come away with when you look at this information? So,
and with that being said, we're just going to wrap up today's episode. Please follow us on all our social medias at Breaks Barrier on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you could, it really, 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 really helps us out. I know I haven't really told you guys to give us the share or the like, but giving us that share or like, if you really do enjoy our content, helps expand and grow our show. That's all what we're about. We want to reach more people. We want to reach more young individuals with like-minded and opposing viewpoints of ourselves. We want to interact and engage with more people on our show. So if you could please just give us that share or like, that would be so highly appreciated. And we really appreciate you guys making it through this whole episode and listening to Cole and I talk on a bi-weekly basis. If you also want to donate to us on PayPal, you can just click that pinned link at the top of our Facebook or Twitter page. Like we say in every episode, donations aren't expected by any means at all, but it would just help us out with production costs, equipment costs, and new subscription costs. So if you guys would like to donate, feel free to on our PayPal link at the top of our Facebook and Twitter page that is pinned. If you want to be on our show or have any questions or concerns, please DM us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Send us an email at coleandjohn@gmail.com. All questions and concerns are welcome no matter what viewpoint you have. We're here for everybody, even if it's opposing viewpoint of your own. We want to discuss, talk, and just engage with our listeners. For example, we had a few people text us the last couple of weeks about our last episode. Friendly, good conversation that they didn't want included on the show, but they just kind of wanted to hear our standpoint on a few things. So, like I said earlier, if you don't want your name or anything on our show and you just kind of want to tell us how you feel, please do it. We're really open to the idea of free speech and letting your voice be heard.
So I guess just on a very final closing note, I'm going to say Bucks 24, Chiefs 30. I'm still hoping Brady wins.
I'm just saying Bucks just win for me so I can win some cash.
And if I get it right, you heard it here first. So, well, with that said, everyone enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening, guys.